We've got cash, treats and a spring shopping spree to be won in a great British giveaway. You could win an amazing £12,345 in tax-free cash. Plus, there's a further £500 of shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. We'll also give you a gadget package to use in your garden this spring. That includes a games console, a pizza oven and a portable smart speaker, so you can listen to GB News on the go. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
I've got an idea. I think that all 30-year-olds should be given £10,000 from the banks of baby boomers. We've got a situation in this country now where millennials are the first generation in modern times expecting to be poorer than their parents. We, as 30-year-olds like me, are half as likely to own a house as people my age 30 years ago. In fact, the cost of a home in Britain compared to average incomes has as big a gap today as it did, wait for it, in the 1860s. It is a Dickensian situation.
Now, I'm sorry about the housing crisis for your generation.
You're not, though, are you?
No,
because you're profiting from it.
I'm profiting from it. Don't be ridiculous.
The house prices now, compared to that period.
If this is the case, Benjamin,
have incomes gone up that fast?
To penalise and punish the elderly when they have worked all their lives to put into the system and say it's your fault, whingy, whiny, we're going to be envious.
We're being punished.
No, well, by the politics, so be the change you want to see in the world.
Taxes, I am actually, and I'm about to tell you about the change I want to see in the world.
Are you good? As long as it's not whining about it.
I'm going to stop whining about it, but we are being taken advantage of at the moment to profit, to help the old. Most of taxpayers' money is spent in two departments, the NHS, so the health department, and the Department for Work and Pensions. Those departments disproportionately serve the older population. Now, I've got no issue with that, but let's not pretend that it is not young working people that is paying for the public services for old people. So actually, we are having it hard, and I just look at the future, and we see a future of perpetually higher taxes to pay for this increasing ageing population, a shrinking labour force, and you're here saying we've got nothing to worry about.
The young stop voting for mass immigration parties. The young stop voting for parties
just
that
to point out,
build houses.
Immigrants actually pay taxes, pensioners don't.
Join me, Camila Tomy, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camila Tomy Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Lee Anderson has told GB News this evening it was a gamble he believes will pay off, defecting from the Conservative Party to the Reform UK Party. In January, Mr Anderson said it was not a proper political party, but this morning he became its first MP after losing the Tory whip for claiming that Islamists had got control of the London mayor. Speaking to Patrick Christie's tonight, he once again refused to apologise, standing by those comments. Mr Anderson also said he's not heard from the Conservative Party since his defection was announced.
On myself, Reform Party have took a gamble on me. It's a gamble I was prepared to take. It's a gamble I think I'll win. It's a gamble that I need to win, and I need the British public now to gamble on me and the Reform Party. I've had no contact from the party at all, and I thought at that stage maybe somebody would have given me a call to say, hold on, Lee, what are you doing? Ever think about it? Nobody. So nothing at all. The only contact I've had, in fact, I've not had no contact from the PM. Even when I lost the whip, that came from the chief whip. It didn't come from the PM, so nothing at all.
The energy regulator Ofgem is looking at ways to protect consumers from spiralling costs amid a record number of unpaid bills. Around £3.1 billion of debts are piling up as concerns grow over the high cost of household bills. It's after the price of energy in an average British home hit more than £3,500 a year last October. To other news, the Princess of Wales has apologised for an altered family photo released by Kensington Palace. Posting to social media, she admitted that, like many amateur photographers, she occasionally experiments with editing, adding she was sorry for any confusion it caused. The Mother's Day image taken by the Prince of Wales was withdrawn by various global photo agencies after suspicions that a number of edits may have been made. And King Charles has thanked the public for their support in a video message to a service celebrating Commonwealth Day. The Queen joined the Prince of Wales at Westminster Abbey for today's service. This year's event drew on the theme of resilience against a backdrop of health worries in the family. Queen Camilla also attended a reception at Marlborough House in London, where she met South African dancers and members of a Samoan band. And though he missed today's event, the King reaffirmed his commitment to the 56 member countries.
As I've said before, the Commonwealth is like the wiring of a house, and its people, our energy and our ideas are the current that runs through those wires. Together and individually, we are strengthened by sharing perspectives and experiences. My belief in our shared endeavours and in the potential of our people remains as sure and strong as it has ever been.
For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour, and I'm joined by the People's Gammon, Paul Cox. That's not him. And the People's Allen, Steve N. Allen. That's Paul Cox. So that was my best part of the intro. And that's Paul Cox. So you do look quite similar. You both wore blue. You've colour-coded the whole thing.
Oh, I think Steve looks great.
I think you look great.
Oh, come on.
And I think you look like Steve. And he looks like you.
I think you need to get your eyes adjusted.
Yeah.
He's got way more hair than I'll ever have ever again.
I'd like it, though. You're the People's Gammon. You're a sort of more sensible, sort of anti-gammon almost, Steve. Is that...
Yeah, and it implies that people are less interested in that, and that is borne true in my career.
Right, yeah. Interesting. I see you as a sort of spy here from the mainstream. Probably shouldn't have started like that. It's a bit hostile. Anyway, good. That went seamlessly, as always. Should we have a look at Tuesday's front pages? Let's do that. So the Daily Mail has, how did Kate photo become a PR disaster? Getting into that in a moment, of course. The Express exposed lies of asylum seekers who become Christian, inverted commas, to stay in the UK. The Guardian has, biggest Tory donor looking at Diane Abbott makes you want to hate all black women. Please no one clip that out of context. The Metro, Kate's photo bomb. The News has Tories delay British ISA 5k tax-free savings until after the election. That's boring. And the Daily Star have Soz, Kate's pit confession, and those were your front pages. So, Steve, let's look at this disturbing asylum seeker story on the Express.
Yeah, we're remembering that the Express is a paper. It's not often you see it in the front pages up here. But exposed lies of asylum seekers who become Christian to stay in UK. There's a whistleblower who's telling us what we already knew and would definitely guess and probably would do ourselves if we're in that situation. People are pretending to be Christian so that they stand a better chance of staying in the UK. The church possibly might not complain about this. It's been surely the biggest uptick in numbers they've had for a good long while. And they've actually decided to come up with a test, or rather the request for greater rigour. So if you turn up and say, I'm Christian, maybe not in that accent, the theory is that there should be more of a rigorous questionnaire. I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, you'd know better than I would. What questions should one ask someone to prove that they're Christian?
Well, that is a good question. But my question is, how do they prove they're gay in the test? I mean, that's
doable.
That's the test. That's a bit. Well, that's the practical test.
Yeah.
But the theory is the Christian part. You know, it's a good question. You could ask so many things. You could ask about, like, which Old Testament book makes reference to the death penalty? I'd be like, boom, Noah. This would be my incredibly, almost impossible to pass test. You know, there's so many things you could... I mean, it's a big book, though, Steve. So even a hardcore Christian could be caught out quite easily.
We'd have to send them back.
Who's the guy that comes back from the dead? If they fail that one, red flag. That's all I'm saying. Paul,
I've not got that far yet.
Yeah. I'm on the first book. Paul, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
favour?
There is, like you say, there are a number of ways. One's Christianity, one's sexuality, and they're basically playing. This is the East playing the West at its own game, essentially. You know, there are a lot of things about our culture that can be exploited. For instance, you know, we will just believe people. Famously in 2017, we just believe women. Now we just believe anything. And I'm just wondering why this is such a big story. I think the big story for me is that we don't talk openly about it, so that we don't end up... This shouldn't be a big news story on the front of a newspaper. This should just be something we accept and we're tackling. Now, I've got a little bit of skin in the game. A family member of mine is an ex-immigration officer, and there is just no way this would have happened in the 70s, 80s and 90s, because these people were qualified and trained to be able to spot this stuff a mile off. It wouldn't have been a questionnaire. They would have just looked in the queue and been able to identify it very quickly.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say a family member of mine is an asylum seeker for a second there, and he pretended to be gay, and now he loves the country. But yeah, I mean, we do seem like absolute mugs here. You've seen some of the sort of bishops and like posting about it. Oh, we've got so many converts, and they never seem to think, maybe this isn't totally sincere. So yeah, it's amazing.
It's upsetting to some degree that the church can be exploited in this way. You know, it's supposed to be the sort of... I know we often denigrate the church and some of the things that go on behind the scenes, but it's still supposed to be a place for good, and it's exploited this way. We should probably protect it in some way. No one's breaking into Iran pretending to be Muslim, are they?
No, fair enough. All right, well, should we move on and do this massive story in the Daily Mail, Paul?
We should do. How did Kate photo become an PR disaster? So, of course, if you don't know, you've probably been in sleep all day or in a coma. But the Princess of Wales issued an extraordinary mea culpa yesterday after admitting she edited an image showing her celebrating Mother's Day with her children. Now, we've all seen it. And if you ever want to test the mental health of the UK... put a royal story in front of them and watch how they react on social media. Because this isn't going to change anyone's view on Kate. This isn't going to change anyone's view on the royal family. The people that dislike it will dislike it further. The people who like it will protect it. At the end of the day, for me, this is just like a family a woman who was clearly been unwell this year, taken a photograph of her family, not been entirely happy with it, manipulated it in some way, and now is under an incredible amount of pressure. It's a non-story.
Yeah, the really good news is that the princess doesn't actually have a partially invisible arm, because that's what I was worried about, that her arm is intact. It was just a dodgy bit of Photoshop, Steve. What do you think of this ongoing conspiracy? I know you're big on conspiracy.
Oh, yeah, I love them. This is the most ridiculous story ever, isn't it? I mean, look, yes, it was edited. You can look at that picture, you know it's edited. You also look at it and know that it wasn't created by Google's Gemini AI.
Right.
Come out
Too many white people.
Too many for that picture. And it's caused such a scandal. The international press agencies had to redact it, or they call it a kill notice. The last time I heard a kill notice was ordered on a princess. Wait a minute, I'm being told I can't finish that joke. Right. But you know, I don't know why we're so obsessed. It is nothing other than...
When did you get that earpiece?
No,
you got your own.
Just the voices.
Okay.
They're just the voices in my head.
It's the BBC.
It's my training. Remember your training, Steve. Don't do that joke. No, I don't know why people are so obsessed. I know it's part of a bigger story. Kate goes missing, and that's not go missing. That's simply they announced she'd have some surgery. She'd be out of work, not visible for 3 months. It's still within the 3 months. But people think we've got a right to see them all the time. Just because we fund them, you don't own 24/7 of their life.
She's still not visible in the photo, but just the fingers. But, I mean, I'm worried, though, about, our beloved princess. Everyone loves the Princess of Wales. It's the princess we actually like, not the other one. And then, I'm worried about her health. I mean, are you concerned? I mean, why? Because if she was fine, presumably, she'd just come out and do a quick video, hey, I'm actually all right, soz about the photo.
But she's recovering from some surgery. I don't think we have a right to know what it is. I mean, yeah, even I sit around thinking, like, what kind of abdominal surgery could be that scandalous that this story's happened? I don't even know what it could be. Like breast implants lower than they should be. She's now got 4. If that's the story, then maybe I understand why they've gone for a hiding thing. But we don't have the right to know.
No, I see that point. And did you think there was something in the fact that she's taken the blame for this? I heard one suggestion that probably this is a staff member that's done it, but she has sort of nobly taken the blame.
That is quite noble if it was a staff member. The idea that there's only one step between Kate's iPhone and the press is quite interesting because...
I've got some info on that. If you really dig into it, so they've looked at the metadata on the picture. It was taken by a Canon photo, and it's opened twice, or rather saved twice, in Adobe Photoshop. So it's not just like a little touch-up on a phone. Someone's actually bothered to open it on a laptop or a desktop.
Now, did they take the ring off, or did she not wear the ring? That's the big question here.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, this conspiracy will rumble on, I'm sure, on X. But let's have a quick look. Not even a quick look, because this is quite a big story. In The Guardian, Steve.
So the headline says, biggest Tory donor, looking at Diane Abbott makes you want to hate all black women. And on this show, I often turn up, and I'm not one of these people who thinks nothing's racist or everything's racist. I've sat here before and said the countryside's not racist, theatre shows aren't racist. This is racist. I think what you got there is racist. In the defence, there was a statement that was released saying that his criticism of Diane Abbott, this is Frank Hester, was nothing to do with her race or gender. Let's look at that phrase, makes you want to hate all black women. I'm not sure it entirely checks out that there's not a whiff of the old racism in here.
Yes, it's not great. I've always maintained Diane Abbott should be mocked as an individual for the content of her character, not in any way that pertains to her entire race. And normally, when I heard this one, Paul, you hear, like, a gaffe involving Diane Abbott, you think, oh, what she said now. But this time, the shoe was on the other foot. I'm so sorry. It's a serious story. Go on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there is no defence of this, is there? The only defence is we can't even be racist in private anymore. So you can't... That was
your first thought, wasn't it? Can't say anything anymore.
It wasn't my first thought. I was just trying to think, well, where's the balance in this story? And the more I read, I'm like, no balance. No, there's no balance. He said some really dodgy things that are really unacceptable in today's modern age. He has, for the balance, though, he has tried to apologise directly to Diane Abbott. She didn't answer the phone, surprisingly. I don't know how he got her number. And he has, he has put out a statement saying how sorry he was. Now, we all know how powerful racism is. And, if you're accused of being racist, then it can end a career, even if you are donating £10 million to the Tory party in the last year. Interestingly, the Labour Party has called for the Conservatives to return the £10 million, like they're going to do that. I don't think that's entirely necessary. I mean, it comes down to a free speech issue again, and it all comes down to what's acceptable. I believe it's unacceptable. I believe he should be heard, and he can say these things if he wants to, but we should be free to judge him when he does.
Don't worry about the £10 million that he's donated. Don't worry, he's got hundreds of millions of pounds worth of contracts from the NHS, so don't worry.
Plus, the Tories only be in a few more months anyway, so they probably won't need it. But, I mean, yeah, to be fair, like you said, he did go on and say, I don't hate all black women at all. So, to be very fair, but then he did say, but I think she should be shot. So he kind of slightly ruined it with the next sentence. It was in 2019, not sure that helps. We're just trying to give all the facts. But, yeah, I think we've covered that one pretty fairly. About as fair as you can be with those sort of comments. So, yeah.
What do you do?
All right. That is it for part one. But coming up, are more Tories about to defect to Reform UK? And Michael Gove redefines extremism. What's he like? See you in a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
For decades, Britain has been dealing with immigration, but for one part of the UK, it is a relatively new experience. GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has this report.
At the end of April 2023, Ireland's immigration was up by 31%. And over a decade, Northern Ireland's has doubled, with South Belfast being the most diverse. Tracy Kelly is a DUP Belfast City Councillor who deals with the issues in this area on a daily basis.
We have working class communities like Sandy Row, like the Donegal Pass, who are blending in with others who are coming here to work and live and mix. But there is also an issue when there's too many people who can't get housed. That seems to be the main issue that I deal with. When people in their own community who've been born and reared here have to move away because there's a lack of housing.
Takura Makoni represents the African community of Northern Ireland.
I would presume mostly 99% of asylum seekers or migrants and refugees coming to this part of the world would have very little knowledge about the internal dynamics in Northern Ireland. So you find out it's almost like you're thrown in the deep water. To have the cognizance to say, here, I need to pick up that I'm living on a peace line and these guys don't like those guys and maybe these guys can tolerate me and those ones won't. You don't have any idea of that. It'll take you up to 10 years to get a real sense of that because, remember, you're focused on trying to rebuild your life.
To avoid further tensions, should government be looking at the placement of those refugees and migrants?
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with 2 men who just want their country back. It's Paul Cox and Steve N. Allen. And you just imagine them. There they are. And now I am again. Let's do the mail then. More Tories are considering switching to Reform UK. Is the ignoring the public's wishes and getting rid of your most popular leader strategy starting to look a bit flawed, Steve?
Very possibly. So Rishi Sunak warned that more Tories are poised to switch to Reform UK. Reform UK, some would say, Deform UK. There's some satire for you. No idea what that means.
Double band.
So this is following Lee Anderson and the defection, a man who said that there was a lot of political soul-searching involved. Now, I think this is balance, isn't it? You know, he might beat me up afterwards, but a lot of soul-searching or being suspended by the party that you were in. Like, if he hadn't have had the whip removed, that soul-searching would have searched less, possibly, for another party. It's like when Suella got fired and they wrote a letter like she was forced to resign. I couldn't stand it here anymore. It was the firing that probably meant that she left. But it's definitely a bad day for the Tories. It's a great day for Reform UK. It's an even better day for Keir Starmer. He must be absolutely loving this. Split the vote down the right. And it was announced by Reform leader Richard Tice, a man... Someone called him a pound shop Nigel Farage once, and it was Lee Anderson who did that, so that's interesting. And he's got a high opinion of a pound shop when your nickname's 30p.
Well, that's politics, Steve. You know, it's locker room talk. Then you switch to another party. You know, you change what you say. I'm not too worried about that. Though it was a massive Tory own goal. I mean, why suspend him for having a pop at Sadiq Khan? Everyone does that. That's what we do that every night. We wouldn't have any work. I mean, it was an overreaction. And then James cleverly sort of doubled down and put him out in the cold even more. So he had no choice, really. And it was a very strange decision. It's going to hurt the Tories because he's a very popular figure on the doorstep, as they say, Paul. What do you think?
Well, if he becomes the Pied Piper and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 others go, then it's a much bigger story. Lee Anderson going to UK Reform is no surprise. I mean, it's a huge story today and now because Reform UK have got their first ever MP, which is big news. And I know... Anecdotally, a lot of people really did enjoy Lee Anderson's speech. Lee Anderson speaks a different language to the average politician. He speaks like the man in the pub does, and that's what he gets criticised for the most by the politicians to some degree, whereas it is transferring well across to that red wall, I think. But that'd be interesting to see. I don't think Lee Anderson going to Reform UK changes the dynamics of British politics. However, if more people go, it will split the Conservative vote. It probably won't take the Labour vote. But the idea of it affecting the red wall would be interesting, because of course that red wall defected from Labour, and they defected from Labour because they were in support at that point of Brexit and Boris Johnson, and perhaps Lee Anderson represents that to them.
He does. And have you heard the Henley plot that Boris may be coming back via this revised Henley seat? So it's all very complicated, but if this female politician steps down, who's known to be a big Boris loyalist, he could get this seat that's just 15 miles away from where he's living anyway. This all lining up for Boris to come back, because let's face it, they can't really do any worse. Rishi's not popular. He was never voted in by anyone. This is a genuine possibility now. And guess who else is eyeing it up slightly, maybe, they think? Lord Cameron. So it's which blast from the past do you want?
Wow. Yeah. Hopefully he's got a referendum in his back pocket for us all to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, they're in trouble. I mean, and I agree with you about this. He speaks like ordinary people, and there's a snobbishness. One Tory Foreign Minister here is saying, I think 2019 MPs who believe being red-faced and shouty is the way to be a serious politician may follow him. I mean, that's just snobbishness and bitterness because you're about to get spanked.
Well, I grew up in St Ashfield, one of the 2 Ashfields that he represents. And, look, yes, the clumsiness of the way he phrased things was what was focused on. I apologise for the clumsiness was the issue. So they never even the Tories didn't say what he said was Islamophobic. But the other thing that's happening here is peeling off the red wall from this coalition of voters who voted for the Tories. And maybe that there never should have been a coalition anyway. It was a false one brought together by people's view of Brexit, which has now been done. And if you are from Sutton Ashfield and maybe you're socially conservative, you worry about issues like immigration, rightly so, do you actually want to vote for a party that's going to borrow to spend on tax cuts for the rich? That's not going to help you as you're working down Pretty Polly.
Yes, absolutely. It's very interesting. Could we have a total realignment in politics as well? Let's see. Let's do the I then. And if you can't solve any of the country's real problems, just start redefining words, Steve, is my cynical take on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Michael Gove's new definition of a boombastic jazz style. No, wait a minute. A definition of extremism means for free speech. That's dated me, that reference, hasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't even get it. And I'm already quite old, so...
You mustn't. So the new definition is expected to recast extremism as the promotion or advancement of an ideology based on intolerance, hatred or violence. There's the other bit that worries me. Those who seek to undermine or overturn the UK's system of liberal democracy. How do you define undermine, and in what way is it impacting the liberal democracy? I look at some of the stuff that we do, or I've done in previous jobs, where you mock the government. Am I undermining liberal democracy? Am I an extremist now?
You were a bit.
I did, yeah.
You are quite undermining sometimes.
But the problem is, it's done to look like the party's being tough on the people marching on Saturdays. This won't impact them at all. No. This is a rule that basically means it will stop people having meetings with government officials and some funding. So it's another classic thing of the government looking tough, but actually not solving a problem, and then just probably blaming lefty lawyers on it not working at the end.
Right. Because, yeah, my understanding was, why can't we enforce the rules we already have? It always seemed to me the police could do it if they wanted to. But does this help the police, Paul, or is it nonsense?
No, it just creates a bigger list of hurty words, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, we've got a list of hurty words, and now we're going to add to the list of hurty words. And people get ever so upset by the hurty words, Nick. But we shouldn't care about that.
You should just own them, like you with gammon.
Exactly. If people are going to shout gammon at you, make yourself the people's gammon.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should ban any speech. I've always said that. I'm not suggesting that all speech is good speech, but I'd much rather hear it. I'd much rather hear what people have to say, and otherwise it just goes underground. I'm not sure, you can't police it either. I mean, that's a whopping great list of hurty words now. You can't just wander around central London with your list of hurty words.
But it's some sort of attempt to deal with the Islamic extremism, and then they have to talk about the far right as well, even though 90% of it...
They would do anyway, wouldn't they? If there was a Muslim uprising, an actual one, not one just in the Daily Mail, and it happened, they would still manage somehow to say that an element of that Islamic uprising was far right.
Yeah. OK, well, that's Gove's plan. Let's do the Telegraph. And Tom Tugendhat has said that no religion has a right to be offended. At least we think that's what he said. He was hiding behind 2 massive security guards at the time.
Oh, that is such a good joke. No religion has a right to be offended, says Security Minister ahead of extremist crackdown. So, as you said, this is Tom Tugendhat, and he said no faith had a right not to be challenged amid concerns that some extremists have used intimidation, and threats of violence against those perceived to have insulted Islam, and Islam being the operative word there. So this is becoming the big elephant in the UK room at the moment, isn't it? Everybody's trying. I'm desperately trying to avoid saying certain things. Tom Tugendhat, even though he's rebelling against it, desperately. Steve is not going to say any of the things that I'm thinking. That's for sure.
There's that joke that we did before we came on air, and we both said, "Not saying that."
Yeah, we did. We had it was a cracker, but you're not getting it. You're not getting it at all. So
I was more worried about the picture. Carry on.
What was the picture?
Don't worry about it. Carry on.
Right. Okay. So what we do know is if you do criticise some religions, they might behead you. And I think that's bad. However, I'd just like to say now, Islam, decent. Good work, chaps.
Okay.
Nice one.
Well, anything... I mean, I don't know how you follow that, Steve, but anything else on this story?
No, I mean, I'm not a religious person. I think if a faith is well developed, if your belief is strong enough, it shouldn't be affected if I think you worship a fictional character.
Correct.
So develop a religion. Religions eventually tend to develop to the stage where you can do a joke about them and make Vicar of Dibley. Do you know what I mean? No one got beheaded for the sitcom Vicar of Dibley.
Well, I mean, I'd like Christianity to be a bit stronger in this country, perhaps not as strong as you outlined there, but, I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if this is going to do anything, Tom Tugendhat saying something. We have a bit of a problem as well that the people are kind of always wound up that these things aren't really dealt with by the politicians, because the liberal system we have just allows a much more loose system of punishment than the average person on the street would want. But anyway, it's a massive... Go on, what are you going to say?
No, all I was going to say is, again, it's about honest conversation. We should be able to have that conversation in this country, for instance. So, we should be able to criticise Islam. I wouldn't.
Do you think he's partly just saying this as well? Last question, just because, the Tories are about to leave and, they sort of, let's fob it off onto Keir Starmer. I mean, it's a bit late for the Tories to do anything about it, isn't it, at this point?
Although it's such a vague point that no religion has the right not to be offended, it's vague enough to just be a general...
Prove that. Yeah, prove that.
Yeah. OK, well, let's do this in the Mail. And Nottinghamshire... I sound like an American. Nottinghamshire Police has been placed into special measures. And we all want to be special, but apparently this is a bad thing, Steve.
It is, yeah. It's the county right next to Leicestershire.
Right.
You're wonder where it is.
I've only just arrived.
It's, yeah.
I'm a Christian, by the way, and gay, but I've just come off the boat. Carry on.
They're told to urgently produce an improvement plan because they've been put in special measures. How are things going in that tough on the crime UK? Not well. So they've been put in special measures by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire Rescue Services, and the acronym is... Should have worked. There's no way.
It's massive, the acronym.
It's the naughty step of policing. And it's an enhanced level of monitoring. And they say here, when a force is not responding to our concerns, they're not even responding to it. The rest of this article doesn't actually point out what they've done, but we know that Nottinghamshire Police has been investigated by the IOPC after it admitted it should have done more to arrest someone who went on to kill 3 people in Nottingham in June last year. It's also been investigated by the College of Policing. When your police are failing, it is a terrifying time.
Yeah, I've noticed. Anything on this, Paul? It is a breaking story, so there's not loads of...
No, there isn't a great deal of detail, but it's very difficult. As much as I'd like to criticise the police here, you can't police everything. Well, basically, we get to the point where something very bad happens and we expect the police to have fixed the whole of our society in some way. I think we have to start the other way round, and we have to collectively, as a community, just be better.
OK. All right, well, that's it for part 2, but coming up, will Trump end the Ukraine war? And has Keir Starmer finally discovered what a woman is? See you in a minute.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Eastern parts may have a touch of frost tonight, but further west it is going to turn wet and windy due to an area of low pressure and associated fronts that are pushing their way in from the Atlantic. We do also have an occluded front affecting parts of northwest Scotland tonight. That will bring some outbreaks of rain for a time, but it's across Northern Ireland where we're going to have the heavy rain and strong winds pushing in, and that rain will later reach far western parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. In the east, where we see some drier and perhaps even clearer weather. Could see a touch of frost, perhaps even some patches of fog first thing tomorrow. But the most hazardous weather will be the heavy rain and those strong blustery winds across western parts initially. Heaviest rain over the higher ground, especially the hills and mountains of North Wales. And that rain then continues its way eastwards, and there will be some heavier bursts, but it does break up and ease a little bit, with some drier interludes developing for a time. Some strong blustery winds to watch out for, taking the edge of those temperatures, though they will be a touch higher than they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go into Wednesday. A band of rain pushing its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, into northern England too. To the south of this, staying pretty cloudy, brighter further north over much of Scotland, but blustery, strong winds, risk of gales or even severe gales towards the northwest. More wet and windy weather to come as we go through the end of the week, particularly towards the northwest, but rather mild.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. So let's get into it with The Guardian. And Hungary's Viktor Orban says Trump won't give any money to Ukraine if he wins. This sort of feels like one of those things you tell your mate in confidence, Steve.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. Yeah, Trump will not give a penny to Ukraine if he wins. They had a meeting. They were chatting about this stuff. Now we've got some meat on the bones when we heard previously that Trump said he could end the war in a day. He would help Putin win. And that gets it done, doesn't it? So according to Orban, Trump has a detailed plan to end the Ukraine war, which involves stopping the money, waiting for Western Europe to run out of money, then Ukraine falls. This is, OK news if you live all the way off in America. Worse news if you live in Britain, but terrible news if you live in Hungary. Why is he feeling so happy about this?
Yeah.
But I don't
Detailed plan was a bit strong, wasn't it? We're stopping the money. Is that detailed?
Well, that was detailed. But this doesn't seem like big man politics, which is what you expect from Trump. This is giving in to the aggressor. It's the opposite, isn't it? But it's reframing it to look how smart and big I am. No, surely you'd stand up to someone who tries to take territory.
Yes, but Trump's policy was deterrent. His policy was, hey, I'm going to bomb Moscow, as they call it, if you do anything. And they were like, oh, he may be serious. That's the Russians, by the way. And so they were suitably worried, and they didn't know what he was going to do. It was unpredictable. But once you've let Biden in, you've let weakness in, the war's started, you've learned that Russia's got a kind of seemingly inexhaustible military. Leo might disagree, but NATO's starting to look a bit weak. We saw Colonel McGregor saying, actually, is NATO just a big bluff at this point? Not everyone agrees with him, of course, but it's a much weaker position for Trump. Let's say he does get back in. Let's say there's a fair election. He comes back in, he wins. He's in a much weaker position than the deterrent position, the already at war and not necessarily going that well position. Anyway, I've talked for too long. Paul, what do you think?
No, it's interesting, Nick, but it is hearsay. Let's caveat the whole story by saying, he's had a chat with his mate Donald Trump, and then he's spoken out of school and said,
yeah.
Oh, Trump said to me he's not going to bother anymore. I mean, what would be quite amusing that if we did have a second Trump presidency, that within his first year he managed to stop both of the major wars going on, because it'd be interesting to see how the media would react.
Still
to that.
hate him.
Yeah, they would have to, wouldn't they? Because they couldn't have any. He stopped the wars, and that would have to be bad in some way. There'd be a way that would be bad.
Yeah, they'll be like, is world peace the new MAGA movement? They'll be like, some critique of it. Go on.
Come on, Steve.
There is a way that you could end a war in a bad way. to help Putin win.
Yes,
yes,
that was
the
a good
war
point.
ends quickly.
Is he talking about that, or is he talking about negotiation, which at this point is the only way out of this? Otherwise, it's an endless war.
Orban didn't mention it. As you say, it's hearsay, but the man who was literally in the room where it happened
I think doesn't he mention it and say that they'll give no money, but then they'll have to negotiate? I can't remember if I saw that or not, because I've been reading so much on this. Like Boris, for example, has said that he believes he can play a role. And this is what I've heard he said. If he comes back in and Trump gets in, or even if Boris doesn't come back into politics officially, he believes he can play a role in persuading Trump to side with Ukraine, the exact opposite of what Orban's saying here. Yeah. He thinks he can help Trump fund Ukraine.
This is the one place where Boris Johnson seems to be loved. No wonder he keeps flying around the world trying to get more help for Ukraine. When he turns up there, he gets standing ovations. This is like Norman Wisdom in Lithuania. Or they've still got a statue of him.
Right. Yeah, just everywhere.
He's
like
found his
Zelig.
market.
Yeah. He also met that Maduro guy we found out tonight. Just, hey, I'm near Venezuela. Thought I'd pop in.
Are we not suspicious why Boris is so interested in Ukraine? It feels like that's really become his project, hasn't it? And I just can't quite understand why.
Well, he's not doing much else at the moment. Just a lot of gardening. And he's made 6 million since he's been out of office from speeches. Not bad. I've only made 1 million. So let's do the Telegraph. And has Keir Starmer finally discovered what a woman is just in time for the election, Paul?
Can you believe it? Keir Starmer backs ban on transgender athletes in female competition. Common sense has to prevail, he says. I mean, this bloke is hilarious, really. It was only a matter of weeks ago that he was proclaiming that some women have willies. Now he wants them to... Now he's saying those women with willies should have their own sports day. The Labour leader said he was supportive of moves to protect female category of sporting competitions, and that common sense has to prevail in terms of safety and integrity of sport. Now, I think we all agree with that, don't we? There's nothing in here that I don't want to put words in everyone else's mouth. I agree with that, because there probably should be, in sport in particular, we have to agree that there is a physical difference for many sports between men and women. And the idea that we would exponentially take this whole ideology through sport is for the birds for me. So I do agree that it's the fact that he seems to flip-flop so much. It's not so much of a flip-flop, it's kind of a gentle flip-flop, but he's just constantly on the wind trying to find out what are they saying.
Yeah.
How do I get votes?
Yeah, don't drop the Ming vase. But I'm wondering, Steve, are Labour actually going to put the woke away? There's a YouTuber called Academic Agent. He talks about putting the woke away. And it's a sort of, are they going to sort of tone down the woke? Because they expressed outrage at the Lord Balfour painting being destroyed quite strongly. Wes Streeting said there's a crisis in masculinity. Now I see Starmer saying women exist and should have sports. So I'm wondering, then we saw that video the other day, though, basically suggesting they were going to make half the country, put half the country in prison for misgendering. So sometimes I see something so woke from Labour, I just think it's going to be an absolute dystopia. Then other times I think they're going to tone it down in ruthless Tony Blair pragmatic fashion.
Well, a lot of the stories where you hear what you presume to be the worst excesses of Labour, when you actually read the story, it's very much just the quote out of context. And even with the one about the proms, Debonair saying that last night the proms shouldn't have... I can't remember.
Rule Britannia.
Yeah, the full interview says, I've got no interest in telling cultural events what to do. It's totally up to them. I think maybe it could be talked about. That's all she said. But the newspaper's got this bit. Look, they're going to get rid of all the songs you've ever liked. Okay. So if you look at this story and you boil it down, he's kind of saying, call yourself whatever you want, but in issues like sport and female spaces and other discussions needed, I bet you that's where a lot of the population actually are.
Of course, but he's been very late to the game on this.
Why go earlier? This is how he's played it.
Yeah.
He's not said anything. Labour haven't said anything.
Slippery Starmer. Slippery Starmer. That's what I call it. Slippery Starmer. OK. Well, let's do the Times. And is Melei the new Trump when it comes to world leaders who enjoy trolling, Steve?
Apparently so. Argentina's Javier Milei. It says, channels Donald Trump on social media, tweeting at 3 a.m. on a golden toilet. And that's got to be a cold toilet. I know it looks fancy, but no one needs a metal toilet. The man's got piles. So he said, I use social media at breakfast, lunch and night. On Saturday, he liked 1,048 posts, formerly known as tweets, and reposted more than 600. It's a lot. The guy needs more fibre.
I don't want to use amphetamine as a word on telly, but that's absurd. Yeah. He's liking 1,000 tweets.
So the likes would be 4 likes a minute.
Wow. Yeah. He does have a lot of energy. He's like, Frera, he's always shouting. You know, he obviously doesn't go to barbers, so he has a lot of time. But that seems like a lot.
Is he not trying to change his economy to become dollar-based, so he has to sell off everything? So he's busy doing that, or you should be, rather than tweeting.
He's scrapping. He's just one of these guys has incredible. He probably sleeps like 30 seconds a night or something. You know these guys. You hear these myths. They just don't need to sleep. He's just eliminating departments at 3 a.m. and then he's up at 6 a.m. tweeting and liking tweets. Have you liked any of yours?
No, exactly. That's why I'm upset. But just to ruin my own point, the people, his critics, have said that this is a form of violence. No, it's not. Oh, it's tweets. It's not a form of violence. Anyone who thinks a tweet is violence has never been hit in the face.
It's totes not violence. Paul, anything else on this?
No, there was an interesting line he said, you know, because he is quite intense, and he said, this even ramps up, this is just the standard stuff they're measuring here, but he says, when I'm travelling, I get a bit more intense. so like, this whole Ibiza vibe gets brought into his tweeting. I mean, he's great for people like us. I don't know if he's great for Argentina yet.
The funny thing is they're comparing it to Trump, but actually, of course, Trump's not on X, famously. What we have is other people posting what Trump's posts on Truth Social onto X in this weird kind of way, like it's some sort of, like they're holding like a rotary phone next to him. It's something kind of old-fashioned about that. Like, he's dictating to them in Morse code what his tweets would be. Just come back on X, Donald.
Do you reckon they all say stop at the end of a sentence?
Stop, yeah. And just sad. He's saying sad at the end. OK, let's do the times. And carbon emissions are at their lowest since the 19th century. Good news in the totally real climate crisis, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. UK carbon emissions fall to lowest level since 1879, which was 100 years before I was born. Which I know what you were thinking. Emissions,
that's what it was.
Yeah,
there was a reason I celebrated that.
I knew you were old.
Emissions dropped 5.7% last year being 2023 for some of the more sleepy viewers, according to analysis based on government energy data by website Carbon Brief, which sounds like something you wear, doesn't it? I've got my carbon briefs. So, right, I mean, this is great, because what it's saying, actually, is we've dropped in the UK, but it's inched up slightly across the world. I think this is a good starting point for us to stop telling children that the world's going to win next week. It's not going to win next week. If you don't put something in the wrong, if you put something in the wrong bin, kids, you're not going to die. Don't listen to the scary teenage people out there shouting stuff. We're all going to be OK. We should look after the world. No one says, I mean, keep tidy Britain. Keep tidy Britain. That's a whole other thing. Keep Britain tidy was a lovely phrase that we all grew up with in the 80s. That was a phrase that meant just basically don't litter everywhere. Look after your green spaces and look after planet Earth.
Yeah, OK. Steve, with 1 minute, you actually know about science. Can you explain this to us?
Yes, one of the reasons why we churned out less carbon, we're not reliant on coal for energy, that's really good, but one of them is we didn't use as much because we've had unreasonably high temperatures. So if we could just increase global temperatures by, I don't know, 1.5, maybe 2 degrees, we could probably solve this climate change issue.
OK, cool. So increased temperatures is the way to go, because it keeps changing. I'm a layman, but that's what you're going with.
I mean, I wouldn't write that down as actual seriously.
I think you might be being sarcastic.
No, I took it seriously, and that is how I'm going to live my life from now on. All right, that is part 3 done, but coming up in the final section, anger as some men were accidentally hired for a job, and why the Cameroon football team are all about 80 years old. See you in a minute.
Mark Dolan Tonight, weekends from 9 p.m.
I've personally been very torn on whether Prince Harry should have full police protection when he's in the United Kingdom. On the one hand, why should taxpayers fork out for somebody that's left the country and the institution? He is no longer a working, serving royal. But I don't think it matters. He is one of the most famous men in the world, and whether he's a royal or not, he is an ambassador for this country. And he still does good. Charitable causes, the Invictus Games, and he is still a nice and charming guy with a heart. And whilst he has left the royal family and departed these shores, he was and remains the son of King Charles. That is a biological fact. Well, let's hope so. And it wasn't his choice to be born into royalty. It wasn't his choice to be the son of the king. And for that reason, I think he should have equal police protection to his brother William when he is in this country. He couldn't be a more high-profile figure, and unfortunately, like all the royals, Harry will be a target for some very bad people. I fear that if, God forbid, anything happened to him or his family, the authorities would have blood on their hands. So, it's not often that I back Prince Harry, but on this one, he has my support. Look what happened to his poor mum, killed in a Paris tunnel in the 1990s with an allegedly drunk chauffeur. A top royal security insider recently told me that Diana would still be with us today if she had had top royal protection at that time. So let's not make the same mistake twice. Prince Harry needs full protection and the best we've got. Yes, he might be a numpty, but he's our numpty.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camila Tomy, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camila Tomy Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's crack on with the Mail. And the Cameroon football team have suspended 62 players for age fraud, including 7 actual babies. All right, not the babies, but it's still pretty crazy, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for giving me the sports story, because I know
no worries.
This. But Cameroon suspends 62 players for age fraud. You mean lying? What's it called? Age fraud?
Yeah, it's rebranded.
Saying the wrong age. The real age of someone who's been hasn't been disclosed, but he joined 61 other players who've been suspended for concealing their ages. This is their version of Luke Littler. Because we all got excited about darts one weekend and everyone just talked about there's no way he's that age. And I imagine that's what they're doing over there. The move comes as Theckerfoot, which I believe is some authority thing, but again...
I think that's what Lewis Schaefer had before the diet.
It's the acronym for African Football Association.
Is it? No, I'm sure it probably is a disease.
Mine was funny.
But they've looked at it, and I tried to care. I don't even care if under-17s have 21-year-olds playing in it. I don't know, I should, but it's football, so I already don't care. And then it's just they're lying about their age.
Well, you've referenced Luke Littler, but the real reference here for football fans was Roger Milla in the 1990 World Cup, Italia 90. He was so good. The dance was amazing. He scored so many goals, and he was about 60, and it was incredible. And he just didn't tell anyone his age.
He was actually over 40. I think he might have been 40.
He was extremely old.
Yeah.
To be destroying all the world's best football team with ease.
Well,
wasn't even wearing boots.
There was an Arsenal and Portsmouth player called Carnu. Do you remember?
Of course I know Carnu.
Yeah, of course, but I'm just pretending you might not.
Yeah.
My life. People talking about football around me.
And he played for Portsmouth. He actually scored the winner in Pompey's FA Cup win in 2008. And we never knew how old Carnu was. He seemed to play until he was in his early 60s.
Yeah, and he was still good.
He was still very good. He was still very good. This has happened a lot with Cameroon in particular. This isn't the first time. I mean, how can you have 62 players in your squad for a start?
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. How many players have got in the squad? They suspended 62. Don't worry, we have 1,037 left. That is absurd.
I left the space for someone to do a Channel migrant joke, and none of you have taken
we don't.
Oh, yeah. I actually had one. I deleted it from my link. I thought, don't even go there. Yeah, but the Home Office could learn a bit from this, couldn't they? That's what I was going to say. All right, got it in there in the end. Wasn't funny. Let's do the Daily Star. And Uri Geller is furious with the Pentagon, though they didn't realise until they checked their cutlery drawer, Paul. Come on.
Uri Geller, come on, here we go. Right. We need some drums in here, don't we? Uri Geller says Pentagon's UFO report is steaming ball poo, and and he has seen aliens. So Geller is now 77, unbelievably, said he was absolutely quivering and fuming with anger, Steve, at what he said was a US government cover-up of UFOs. And like you say, I can't imagine that there was a straight spoon in the house that night.
No one knows how he does it still. And also, no one knows how he knows so many high-level people. He's like, yeah, I'm best friends with Michael Jackson and Benjamin Netanyahu. But apparently it's because he's CIA, which would make sense. But I don't want to say too much about that because I hear they've got a lot of resources and like secrets. Anyway, sorry, Paul, I cut you off.
No, you haven't. That was very, very informative. He has always said there are aliens. He speaks to them regularly by all accounts. I think on CB radio. I don't know how he does it. But so I really don't know what to add to this story other than the fact that he's...
Okay. Well, Steve's got an anecdote about Uri Geller.
Yeah, I interviewed him once and we had a big falling out because I like logic and reason, and that is not the kind of person you want to be interviewed by. So he was doing one of these things where he gets everyone to, like, chant at 11 a.m. to sort out a football game or something. It doesn't work, and I pointed out that when it doesn't work, you can just blame everyone else, and he said my negativity was impacting his psyche or something. But the same thing, I got home and all of my spoons are absolutely fine. So clearly, this man has got no powers.
How dare you? How dare you? Look at the spoons, Steve.
He's got skin
They're
in
not
the
bending
game.
themselves.
Aliens are real. Oh, you got a special coming out or something. He's into all
Aliens
this.
are real. He's seen them. And he could bend them if he wanted to. OK, well, let's do the Telegraph. And Sir Mark Rowley, this is a bit of a change of pace, has attacked armchair commentators who criticise the police. I can't think who he means, Steve.
Yeah, interesting. He's hit out armchair commentators who criticise the police's actions. What he's saying is, get out there, solve this crime yourself. Are you a billionaire? Your parents got shot. What are you going to do? Dress up like a bat? I think that's where he's going with this one. But it's right to criticise. You can't shut down all armchair opposition because the people in armchairs are the people the police are in charge of protecting.
The taxpayer,
We've
the
got
citizen.
skin in this game, yeah. So it very much feels like shutting down the argument. Complex, challenging and messy affair, apparently, policing. Yeah, it is, and we're allowed to comment on what you think you've done. And this follows on from the Iranian man who was carrying the sign that read Hamas is terrorists, and he was the one arrested, not for carrying the sign, it turns out. But we're allowed to comment on this. We're allowed to point out... I mean, if what you're doing is simply placating the angry mob, that's Trump version of politics. That's...
Yes, exactly. I thought you were going to say he was arrested for grammar, the sign guy. But no, exactly. You can't just arrest a guy that's... I said this the other night. It's a narco-tyranny. You can't just arrest a guy that's innocent. But I think that, of course, the police are going to be criticised. They do a great job on an individual level, lots of great policemen, but it's the overall tone we don't agree with, Paul, the two-tier policing. Yeah,
I think that's definitely an argument. I can understand where he comes out and tries to defend it. I mean, he did actually say they're also forced to do their job in the glare of hundreds of people who are ready to film their every moment. What's wrong with that? Well, that's exactly what they did. If they didn't, then there would be a lot of police crime that didn't get solved. Because it's the police that quite often are causing their own problems.
They wear body cams. They can't say, but don't film me.
Well, we're exposed every night, dancing around the landmine of cancel culture. Everyone's looking at us, and we don't complain. But, all right, let's do The Guardian very quickly. And fury, as some men were actually hired for a desirable job role, Paul.
Yeah, diversity rally-ups after Alan Turing Institute hires male scientists, Nick. Whatever next.
Males.
So
men.
Essentially, there were 4 top spots. They all went to men. Men are bad, and that's breaking news. Now, in defence of the Alan Turing Institute, a woman spokesman, funnily enough, spokesperson. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we've got 20 seconds left, Paul. Just keep saying spokesman and spokesperson.
Well, she came out and said they followed this new theory of meritocracy, which I'm all for.
A real quick take.
15 seconds.
Alan Turing, very unfairly persecuted for being gay, would have loved 6 men.
That's a great joke. I very much doubt we're going to top that. Thank you very much. We've said so many things that will get us cancelled tonight, but the show is pretty much over, so let's have another look at Tuesday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has, how did Kate photo become a PR disaster? The Express has exposed lies of asylum seekers who become Christian to stay in UK, and Christian is in inverted commas because they're totally not. The Guardian, biggest Tory donor, looking at Diane Abbott makes you want to hate all black women. The Metro, Kate's photo bomb. The Eye has Tories delay British ISA 5k tax-free savings until after election. And the Daily Star has Soz, Kate's pick confession, and those are your front pages. That is it for tonight's show. Thanks so much to Paul and Steve. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, it's good night or good morning, and God bless.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Eastern parts may have a touch of frost tonight, but further west it is going to turn wet and windy due to an area of low pressure and associated fronts that are pushing their way in from the Atlantic. We do also have an occluded front affecting parts of northwest Scotland tonight. That will bring some outbreaks of rain for a time, but it's across Northern Ireland where we're going to have the heavy rain and strong winds pushing in, and that rain will later reach far western parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. In the east, where we see some drier and perhaps even clearer weather, could see a touch of frost, perhaps even some patches of fog first thing tomorrow, but the most hazardous weather will be the heavy rain and those strong blustery winds across western parts initially, heaviest rain over the higher ground, especially the hills and mountains of North Wales, and that rain then continues its way eastwards, and there will be some heavier bursts, but it does break up and ease a little bit with some drier interludes developing for a time. Some strong blustery winds to watch out for, taking the edge of those temperatures, though they will be a touch higher than they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go into Wednesday, a band of rain pushing its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England too. To the south of this, staying pretty cloudy, brighter further north over much of Scotland, but blustery, strong winds, risk of gales or even severe gales towards the northwest. More wet and windy weather to come as we go through the end of the week, particularly towards the northwest, but rather mild.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner?
You've won £18,000.
Oh, flipping heck. I don't know what to say. Enter our massive spring giveaway with 3 big seasonal prizes to be won. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.